All right. So we're going to talk about biodiversity and keystone species. I'm Jasmine.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Paolo.
So first, we're going to go over a couple definitions. Biodiversity is the variety and variability of life on Earth, and these measures of variation can be between genetic level, species level, or ecosystem level. Um, and it's basically that all of Earth's species work together to survive and maintain their ecosystems. For example, the grass and pastures feed cattle, and the cattle then produce manure that returns nutrients to the soil, and then it helps to grow more grass. And the manure can also be used as fertilizer for cropland. So this provides benefits for humans, such as food, clothing, or medicine. And so keystone species fit into this because they're defined as a species which has a disproportionately large effect on the environment relative to its abundance, and this was coined by Robert T. Payne in 1969. And so a keystone species can be any organism from an animal to plants to bacteria and fungi, and it's basically the glue that holds a habitat together. Um, they may not be the largest or most plentiful species in the ecological community, but if the keystone is removed, it sets off a chain of events that turns the structure and biodiversity of its habitat into something really different. And although all of an ecosystem's many components are intricately linked, these are the living organisms that play a pivotal role in how that ecosystem functions. And we talked about the sea otters in class and how without them eating sea urchins, the sea urchins overgraze the kelp, and then the ecosystem deteriorated.
And then we're going to go over our keystone species case study, which in our case is wild salmon. So why is wild salmon important? Well, from grizzly bears to orca whales, at least 137 different species depend on the marine-rich nutrients that wild salmon provides. Salmons are also anadromous, which means they migrate back from the ocean to their natal stream to spawn offspring. This allows for salmon to be linked to freshwater ecosystems, which rely on feedbacks between salmon runs, food webs, and riparian forests. This also allows for salmon to contribute to vast amounts of marine nutrients from the ocean to the headwaters of otherwise low productivity rivers. So why is salmon important continued? Salmon in the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, and Canada. In southeastern Alaska, spawning salmon contribute up to 25% of the nitrogen in the foliage of trees, resulting in tree growth rates nearly 3 times higher than in areas without salmon spawning. In a report by the Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Canada's climate is warming twice the global average, contributing to a low salmon population in the British Columbia. This means that bears have a harder time finding food and have to travel farther for it. This also impacts bears' reproduction. If female bears don't have enough fat to live off of during hibernation, this might influence how much cubs she has.
Alright, so the significance of keystone species. So keystone species maintain the local biodiversity of an ecosystem, influencing the abundance and other types of species in a habitat. They are nearly always critical components of the local food web, and one of the defining characteristics of a keystone species is that it fills a critical ecological role that no other species can. Without its keystone species, an entire ecosystem could radically change or cease to exist altogether. It's important to note that a species' role can change from one ecosystem to the next, and a species that is considered a keystone in one environment may not be considered the same in another. And also, not having a keystone species in an ecosystem can significantly affect the nutrition cycles of other species. Thank you.
All right, that's it.